want to have a child for my ex, Victor. Just one child, it's no big deal." Those were the words Claire dropped at the dinner table, her fork clinking softly against the plate like a hammer shattering glass. She had no idea that the man across from her wasn't just listening. He was already planning the most devastating response a husband could give. What followed wasn't rage, but a masterpiece of cold revenge that would change both their lives forever. Imagine your own wife saying this, looking you in the eye without a hint of shame. What would you do? Would you fight for your marriage? Would you walk away? Or would you plot something darker? Something she could never see coming? Before you answer, listen to his story, because what he chose to do changed everything, and it's not the ending you're expecting. It was a late Friday evening in the city. Cars hissed down the wet asphalt outside the apartment window, neon lights bleeding across the glass. Inside, Victor sat at the dining table, tie loosened, his laptop still open with unread emails piling up. He had spent 12 years building not just his career but a life with Claire. 12 years of shared dreams, quiet mornings and sacrifices only they knew about. Claire walked in, her voice unnervingly calm. "Victor, we need to talk." The way she said it already felt wrong. His chest tightened, but he closed the laptop, giving her his full attention. That's when she dropped the bomb. Her ex, Darren, had reached out. Darren, the ghost of a past she swore was long buried. And now, according to Claire, Darren wanted a child. Victor blinked, stunned. "You're joking, right?" She shook her head, her expression maddeningly casual. "It's just one child. No big deal. After that, I'll come back to you. We'll be fine." No big deal. The words ricocheted inside Victor's skull. How could she say that? How could she reduce betrayal, humiliation, and the very foundation of their marriage to no big deal? He stood slowly, gripping the edge of the table. "Do you even hear yourself, Claire? You're my wife, and you're standing here telling me you want to sleep with another man, your ex, because he wants an heir?" She crossed her arms. "You're overreacting. It's just one child. Darren says he'll take care of everything. We'll still have our life." Victor laughed, but it wasn't laughter. It was a broken sound, jagged, the kind that carried rage hidden beneath restraint. He saw something in her eyes, a flicker of defiance, maybe even nostalgia for the past she once shared with Darren. In that moment, a line was drawn. He looked at her and said, steady and deliberate, "If you walk down that road, Claire, you are walking out of this marriage forever. There will be no coming back." She didn't flinch. She didn't cry. She didn't even argue. Instead, she gave a small, almost dismissive shrug that cut deeper than any words. And Victor knew right then that something had broken beyond repair. But here's the question for you. What do you think a man should do when the person he gave his life to betrays him so openly? Do you think Victor should forgive, fight for her, or teach her a lesson so unforgettable it would echo for the rest of her life? Because the choice he made, it wasn't what anyone expected. Victor's words still hung in the air like smoke from a fire that refused to die. If you walk down that road, you are walking out of this marriage forever. But Claire didn't tremble. She didn't retreat. She leaned back against the counter, arms folded, her face set with the kind of pride that blinds a person from the cliff they're standing on. "Victor," she said, her tone patient, almost patronizing, "you're being dramatic. I'm not leaving you. I'm not divorcing you. I'm simply helping someone who once meant something to me. It's just one child. After that, everything goes back to normal." Normal. That word twisted inside Victor like a knife. She thought she could break their vows, step outside the sacred circle of their marriage, and then return to normal. He stared at her, eyes narrowing. "Claire, if you can say that to my face, then I don't even know who you are anymore." She rolled her eyes, as if his pain was nothing more than an inconvenience. "I know you love me, and I know you'll come around. You always do." That was the dagger. Her confidence, her arrogance, the belief that no matter what she did, no matter how deep the wound, he would always be waiting to bandage her mistakes. Victor didn't argue further. He didn't shout or curse. Instead, he walked past her, grabbed his jacket, and left the apartment. Outside, the night felt colder than usual, the city lights cruel in their brightness. He wandered, replaying every word, every gesture. The woman he had loved for more than a decade was choosing another man's legacy over their marriage. And still, part of him hoped she would come to her senses, hoped she would remember the vows they once whispered to each other. But hope, he would soon learn, can be the most dangerous lie of all. Days passed, then weeks. Victor remained distant, but Claire mistook his silence for surrender. She met Darren at a sleek downtown cafe, her pulse racing with old memories. Darren hadn't changed much, still tall, still magnetic, still carrying that air of charm that once made her believe he was the only man she could ever love. He smiled at her, but his words were blunt. "Claire, I don't want complications. I just want a child. My name, my bloodline. That's what matters. You give me that, and I'll make sure you're taken care of during the process, but don't expect us." Claire's breath caught. She had imagined something more, a rekindling, a stolen flame. Instead, he offered cold transactions and clear boundaries. Still, pride wouldn't let her back down. She told herself Victor would forgive, Darren would get what he wanted, and life would balance itself again. She clung to that illusion with both hands. What she didn't know was that Victor's silence was not surrender. It was preparation. Because when a man's heart breaks, he either falls apart, or he rebuilds into something his betrayer will never recognize. And Victor was already choosing the latter. Claire thought she knew what she was walking into. She had convinced herself Darren was more than his words, more than his request. She told herself his coldness at the cafe was just his way of protecting himself. Surely once they were alone, the spark would return. But reality has a way of stripping fantasies bare. The first time she went to Darren's condo, she noticed everything about the place felt temporary. Modern furniture, expensive art on the walls, yet no warmth, no memory, no trace of a life being lived. It was a showroom, not a home. And Darren, standing there in a tailored suit, was every bit as sterile as the walls around him. "Glad you came," he said, voice clipped, efficient. He kissed her cheek like a businessman sealing a deal, not like a man greeting a lover. Claire laughed nervously. "I was half expecting you to have flowers or something." He gave her a look that silenced her smile. "Claire, I'm not here to romance you. We had our time. That's over. This is about legacy, my family name. That's it." The words hit her harder than she wanted to admit. Still, pride held her upright. "And after? What happens once?" "After?" He poured himself a drink, not even offering her one. "After you go back to your husband, I'll provide financial security for the child, make sure everything is handled. But don't mistake this for love. I don't have that to give you anymore." It was like someone had slapped her. For weeks, she had painted Darren in the colors of her memory. The boy who once swore the world revolved around her. But the man standing before her now wasn't that boy. He wasn't even interested in her. She was just a vessel for his ambition. Meanwhile, across town, Victor sat in their dimly lit apartment, staring at his reflection in the dark TV screen. Claire was out again. He didn't need to ask where. He knew. And though his chest ached with betrayal, his mind was sharpening. He remembered the early years, how Claire used to look at him like he was her whole world. He remembered working late nights, sacrificing vacations, chasing promotions so she wouldn't have to worry about a thing. He had given her stability, loyalty, love, and now she was throwing it all away for a man who saw her as nothing but a means to an end. The thought that haunted him wasn't her betrayal. It was her confidence that he would always be there waiting when she came crawling back. Victor whispered to himself, voice low, almost unrecognizable. She thinks I'll forgive. She thinks I'll still be here. She has no idea. By the third meeting with Darren, Claire finally started to feel it. The emptiness. He barely touched her. He didn't look at her with passion. Every word was transactional. She felt like a signed contract, not a woman. One night, lying alone in his condo bed, she stared at the ceiling, realizing the truth she had ignored. Darren didn't love her. He never would. She was a tool, nothing more. And as the weight of that reality sank in, one terrifying question echoed in her mind. What if Victor meant what he said? What if, when I return, there's no marriage left at all? Her pride told her she still had time, but deep down, in the quiet parts of her soul, a seed of dread began to grow. And Victor, miles away, was already planting seeds of his own, ones that would blossom into the kind of revenge Claire would never see coming. By the fourth month, the fantasy had burned itself out. Darren no longer even pretended to care. His calls were blunt, his messages curt, his presence suffocating in its indifference. Claire had thought she could balance two worlds, the nostalgia of her past and the comfort of her present. But instead she found herself standing on ashes. She wanted tenderness. She wanted to be held the way Victor used to hold her when storms rattled the windows at night. She wanted to feel like someone's chosen, not someone's convenience. But every time she reached for Darren's hand, he pulled away. Every time she tried to speak of feelings, he changed the subject back to plans, clinics, contracts. And in those silences, Victor's face haunted her. His warning echoed in her head. If you walk down that road, you are walking out of this marriage forever. The thought made her chest ache. She convinced herself it was just his anger speaking, that once he saw her again, once she explained, he would forgive. He had to. Victor had always been her anchor, her safety net. He was too loyal, too soft-hearted to let her go completely. At least, that's what she believed. One evening, Claire stood outside the apartment door, her palms sweating. She had rehearsed her lines all day, an apology wrapped in tears, promises of change, confessions of weakness. She even pictured Victor pulling her into his arms, furious but unable to resist his love for her. She slipped her key into the lock, but it didn't turn. Confused, she tried again. Nothing. Her stomach dropped. She knocked lightly. "Victor, it's me." No answer. She knocked harder. "Victor, please open the door." Still nothing. Panic clawed at her chest. She pulled out her phone, dialed his number. It rang once, then cut straight to voicemail. She tried again, and again. No answer. Finally, she slid down the hallway wall, her knees pulled to her chest. The apartment, her home, was silent on the other side of the door. Silent, but not empty. She swore she could hear faint movements inside, the sound of someone deliberately ignoring her. When she returned the next day, the locks had been changed. Her belongings, what little she hadn't already left behind, were gone. A notice was taped to the door. Property sold. No forwarding address. Claire staggered back, heart hammering. Sold? The apartment where they built their life. Their photographs, their memories, gone. She called his office. The receptionist said politely that Mr. Victor no longer worked there. She checked his email. Disconnected. His social media accounts vanished. It was as if he had erased himself from her world completely. That night, Claire sat in her car in the empty parking lot, her hands trembling on the steering wheel. For the first time, it dawned on her that Victor hadn't been bluffing. He hadn't been dramatic. He meant every word. And if he had the strength to cut her off this completely, what else was he capable of? The question chilled her more than the night air, because for the first time, Claire wasn't worried about losing Darren, or pride, or even her reputation. She was terrified of losing Victor forever. But she had no idea. She already had. The days blurred together, but one fact remained sharp as glass. Victor was gone. At first, Claire thought it was a cruel game, a punishment to scare her into crawling back. She imagined him watching from a distance, waiting for her tears, savoring her desperation before finally returning with open arms. She convinced herself she just had to prove she was sorry, and he would relent. But as the weeks rolled on, her illusions began to crack. The apartment wasn't just sold. It had been stripped clean. Neighbors told her movers had come late at night, hauling out boxes and furniture with quiet precision. His name had disappeared from bills, accounts, and even the mailbox. It was as if he had planned this escape long before she knocked on that door. Claire went to his mother's house, a 2-hour drive away. The older woman opened the door, eyes cold and unwavering. "Mrs. Bennett, please," Claire begged. "I just need to talk to him. Please tell me where he is." Victor's mother tightened her grip on the doorframe. "My son gave everything to you, and you threw it away. Don't come here again." With that, she shut the door in Claire's face, the sound final, like a judge slamming down a gavel. Claire stood there on the porch, shivering. For the first time in years, she realized she was utterly alone. Nights became the hardest. She would lie awake, staring at the ceiling of a friend's spare room, haunted by what she had done. She thought of Victor's quiet eyes, the way he used to reach for her hand in crowded rooms, grounding her when the world felt too heavy. She thought of his laugh, the warmth of his presence, the man who had been her anchor when life threatened to pull her under. And she thought of Darren, the man she had chosen instead. Darren, who never called, never asked how she felt, never once held her like she mattered. To him, she was nothing but a signature on a contract, a promise of lineage. The contrast gnawed at her soul. She had traded loyalty for emptiness, love for cold ambition, her husband for a ghost of the past. One night, she dialed Victor's number again, tears streaking down her face. The line rang once, then cut off. It was different this time. Not voicemail, not silence, just disconnected. Her sobs filled the room. "Victor, please," she whispered into the void. "Please, come back. I was wrong. I'll do anything. Just don't leave me like this." But the only answer was silence. Then came the final blow. Through whispers in mutual circles, Claire discovered Victor had resigned from his job, sold not just the apartment but nearly everything he owned, and vanished to another city. He hadn't gone into hiding out of shame. He had moved forward, deliberately, decisively, into a life without her. Claire collapsed when she heard it, her pride finally shattering. She had believed he could never live without her, that she was irreplaceable. But Victor had proven her wrong in the most devastating way. She hadn't just lost her husband. She had lost her home, her place in his world, her identity as his wife. And the cruelest part? Somewhere deep down she realized she deserved it. Claire had convinced herself that Victor's disappearance was temporary. She told herself he needed space, time to heal, maybe months to let his anger burn out. Then eventually he would return. He always did. But reality doesn't bend for pride. One quiet afternoon, while scrolling through social media, Claire froze. A tagged photo appeared in a mutual acquaintance's feed. Her breath hitched. There he was. Victor. Standing tall, smiling, radiant in a way she hadn't seen in years. And he wasn't alone. Beside him was a woman, hand laced with his, her face glowing with the easy joy of someone deeply loved. They looked inseparable, their bodies angled toward each other, as though the rest of the world no longer mattered. Claire's hand trembled as she zoomed in on the image. The woman wasn't flashy, not the kind who turned heads on the street. She was simple, elegant, with an air of quiet dignity. But her smile lit Victor's face in a way Claire hadn't managed in years. The caption below cut deeper than the image itself. Some people bring peace wherever they go. Peace. The one thing Victor had never found in Claire's storm. Claire shut off her phone, her pulse racing. This wasn't possible. Victor couldn't move on so quickly. He couldn't love someone else. Could he? The days that followed were torture. More photos surfaced. Victor laughing at a dinner party. Victor holding hands in the park. Victor and this woman seated at a cafe. leaning in close as if sharing secrets no one else could understand. And each image struck the same nerve. He looked free, lighter, as though the weight she had placed on his shoulders all those years had finally lifted. Claire began to unravel. She stopped eating, stopped sleeping, haunted by the realization that she wasn't irreplaceable. She wasn't the anchor of his world. She was a chapter he had closed, a lesson he had survived. One evening, unable to bear the silence, she reached out to a mutual friend. "Do you know where Victor is? Please, I just need to talk to him." The friend hesitated before answering. "Claire, he's happy now. Really happy. He doesn't talk about you. He doesn't even bring up the past. It's like you don't exist in his new life." Claire's stomach twisted. "And this woman? Who is she?" "She's kind, loyal, respectful. She treats him the way a man like him deserves. Claire, listen to me. Don't interfere. Let him be." But Claire couldn't. Her pride wouldn't allow it. She couldn't stand the thought of another woman living the life that once belonged to her. That night, lying awake in the darkness, Claire whispered into the silence, "He was supposed to forgive me. He was supposed to wait." But the truth was undeniable. Victor hadn't just moved on. He had found something better. And for the first time in her life, Claire realized the cruelest punishment wasn't revenge, wasn't anger, wasn't even words of hatred. It was being forgotten. Claire had always believed she could fix things with words. In every fight, every mistake, she relied on her ability to twist explanations into apologies, apologies into promises, and promises into second chances. But this time was different. Victor wasn't answering calls, he wasn't reading her emails, he wasn't even blocking her. He was ignoring her so completely, so deliberately, it was as though she didn't exist. That silence drove her mad. And when she finally saw him again, weeks later, it wasn't by accident. Claire had tracked him down through careful digging, piecing together small clues, an event announcement here, a tagged post there. And now, standing across the street from a cozy little cafe, she saw him through the glass window. Victor, her Victor, sitting at a corner table laughing. But the laughter wasn't for her. It was for the woman sitting across from him. The same woman from the photos. She had her hand resting on his, her head tilted slightly, eyes locked on him like he was the only man in the universe. And Victor looked at her the way he used to look at Claire, before everything turned to dust. The sight burned. Rage and grief twisted inside her until she couldn't breathe. Without thinking, she stormed across the street, yanked open the cafe door, and marched straight toward their table. Victor saw her first. His smile vanished, replaced by a stillness that cut deeper than anger. "Claire," he said evenly, "what are you doing here?" Her voice cracked, too loud for the small cafe. "What am I doing here? What are you doing here?" Smiling like none of it mattered. Like I never mattered. Heads turned. Murmurs rippled through the cafe. But Claire didn't care. She turned her fury on the woman sitting across from him. "And you, who are you? What did you do to him? What lies did you tell to steal my husband?" The woman blinked, calm, unfazed. She reached across the table, lacing her fingers through Victor's, her voice steady but sharp. "I didn't steal him. You threw him away. And some of us know how to value what you don't." Claire staggered back, the words slapping harder than any hand. Her eyes darted to Victor, pleading. "Tell me this isn't real. Tell me she doesn't mean anything. Please, Victor." For a long moment, he just looked at her, silent, unreadable. Then slowly he said the words she feared most. "She means everything." The cafe was silent except for the pounding of Claire's heart. She fled into the night, her tears blinding her, her chest heaving with sobs that clawed their way out of her throat. She had come to confront him, to remind him of who she was, to demand the second chance she thought was hers by right. Instead, she had been replaced. Not with anger, not with hatred, but with love. Real love, the kind she had squandered and dismissed as ordinary. And that was the moment Claire finally understood. Victor wasn't punishing her. He wasn't even thinking about her. He had moved on, and there was no space for her in his new world. For weeks after the cafe incident, Claire felt as though she were living outside her own body. She replayed the scene in her head over and over. Victor's calm voice, his hand entwined with another woman's, his steady declaration, "She means everything." Those words echoed louder than her heartbeat, louder than her tears, louder than the walls closing in around her. They weren't just words. They were a sentence, a final verdict. She had lost him, not temporarily, not in a way time could repair. She had lost him completely. At first, she tried denial. She told herself Victor was angry, confused, under some spell cast by the new woman. Surely he would wake up and remember who had been by his side for 12 years. He had to. But then came the silence. Victor didn't reach out. He didn't argue, didn't lash out, didn't even acknowledge her existence. The more she tried to contact him, calls, messages, desperate emails, the deeper the silence grew. And slowly, denial gave way to rage. How dare he? She snapped to herself one night, pacing the small apartment she had rented after losing everything. How dare he erase me, after all those years, after everything I gave him? He owes me a chance. He owes me forgiveness. But the rage burned out quickly, leaving only the cold ashes of truth. He owed her nothing, because she had been the one who broke him. She had been the one who dismissed his love as expendable, replaceable, and now she was the one left standing outside the locked doors of his life, begging to be let in. Her friends grew distant. Some couldn't bear to listen to her endless regrets. Others were tired of watching her unravel. Even Darren, the man she had betrayed her husband for, had long since vanished from her orbit, his mission complete, his interest gone. Claire was alone, utterly, devastatingly alone. Nights stretched endlessly. She lay awake in bed, staring at the ceiling, haunted by memories. Victor's laugh echoing in their old apartment, his hand reaching for hers during storms, his quiet voice whispering, "We'll get through this," whenever life grew hard. And then, the memory of his last words to her, steady and final. "If you walk down that road, you are walking out of this marriage forever." He hadn't lied. One morning she walked past a park on her way to the store, and there he was, Victor, sitting on a bench, sunlight warming his face, his arm draped casually around the woman beside him. They were laughing, sharing a cone of ice cream, like two teenagers in love. Claire froze, her heart lurching. For a fleeting second, she imagined walking up, throwing herself at his feet, begging him to remember the life they once had. But then she saw it, the ease in his posture, the peace in his eyes. He didn't look like a man missing something. He looked like a man who had found exactly what he needed. And that's when Claire collapsed. Not physically, but inside, where no one could see. The fight left her. The pride drained away. All that remained was regret. Sharp, unrelenting, unforgiving regret. She had gambled with the one thing in life that couldn't be replaced, loyalty. And she had lost. It happened on a gray afternoon months after the cafe humiliation. Claire hadn't planned it. She wasn't stalking him this time. Fate, cruel, deliberate fate, delivered the moment to her doorstep. She was walking through the city square, her coat pulled tight against the autumn wind when she saw him. Victor. He was standing at a crosswalk, holding a shopping bag in one hand. His other hand was interlaced with hers, the woman, the one who had replaced her. The two of them looked ordinary, but there was a glow about them, a quiet intimacy that shouted louder than any public declaration. For a moment, Claire froze. She could have turned away, vanished into the crowd, but something stronger, desperation, longing, pride, pushed her forward. Victor, she called, her voice cracking. He turned. Their eyes met for the first time in months. For a fleeting second, her heart leapt. There he was, the man she had loved, the man she had betrayed, the man she still dreamed of in the darkest corners of the night. The crowd moved around them, the world continuing as though nothing had shifted. But for Claire, time stopped. She stepped closer, her voice trembling. Please, just give me a minute. Just 1 minute. Victor's eyes were steady, unreadable. He didn't release the other woman's hand. He didn't move closer. He simply stood there, waiting. Claire's tears blurred the edges of her vision. I was wrong. I see it now. Darren used me, and I let pride blind me. But you were everything, my anchor, my home. I threw it away, and I can't undo it. But please, Victor, please don't erase me like I never mattered. I know I don't deserve forgiveness, but just tell me. Tell me there's a part of you that still remembers what we had. Her voice broke, and the words dissolved into sobs. For the first time, Victor spoke, his voice calm, low, but heavy with finality. I remember, Claire. I remember everything. Her heart jolted with hope. But then came the rest. And that's exactly why I'll never go back. The silence that followed was louder than thunder. Claire's knees weakened, her breath hitched in her throat. Victor glanced at the woman beside him, his expression softening in a way Claire hadn't seen in years. Then he looked back at Claire, his voice firm. You had my loyalty, my love, my trust. And you chose to gamble it away for someone who saw you as nothing. That was your choice. And this? He gestured toward the life he had built. The peace in his eyes. The woman holding his hand. This is mine. He didn't raise his voice. He didn't curse or condemn. He simply turned, the crosswalk light flickering green, and walked away, hand in hand with the woman who now carried his heart. Claire stood rooted in the square, the noise of the city rushing around her, her chest hollow, her world collapsing all over again. He had remembered. But remembering didn't mean loving. And that was the final, irreversible truth. Winter came swiftly that year, draping the city in gray skies and bitter winds. For most people, the season brought warmth, festive lights, gatherings with family, laughter spilling from crowded homes. But for Claire, the world had turned cold in more ways than one. She lived now in a small, dim apartment at the edge of town. The walls were bare, the air heavy with silence. She had no ring on her finger, no partner to share her burdens, no family to call her own. Even her friends had grown distant, tired of her endless cycle of regrets. Most nights she sat by the window with a blanket wrapped around her, staring at the glowing apartments across the street. Behind every window, she imagined families laughing together, couples cooking side by side, children racing across the floors in pajamas, lives full of love and meaning. Lives that could have been hers if she hadn't thrown it away. One evening, as snow fell in soft flurries outside, Claire gathered the courage to open a box she had been avoiding. Inside were fragments of the life she had lost, photographs of vacations, a dried bouquet from their wedding, cards Victor had written her over the years. Her hands trembled as she lifted one of the cards, his handwriting neat and steady. No matter what comes, you'll always be my forever. A sob broke from her chest. The cruel irony twisted inside her. She had been someone's forever, and she had squandered it for a fleeting temptation. She pressed the card to her heart, tears streaming down her face, whispering into the silence. I'm sorry, Victor. I'm so sorry. But the silence gave no answer. Far across the city, Victor was likely at home, maybe seated by a fireplace, his new love curled up beside him, the air around them filled with warmth and laughter. He wasn't haunted by the past anymore. He had built something new, something whole. And that was the sharpest pain of all, knowing that he had healed, while she remained broken. Months turned into years, but the regret never dulled. Claire aged with it, carrying the invisible weight of her choices wherever she went. People who met her saw only a quiet woman with distant eyes, never guessing that behind them was a story of love, lost, betrayal, and the kind of mistake that could never be undone. Because in the end, her punishment wasn't Victor's anger. It was his peace. The cruelest revenge was not fire or fury. It was indifference. It was knowing that the man she had once dismissed as ordinary had gone on to live an extraordinary life without her. And for the rest of her days, Claire carried that truth like a shadow, a constant reminder of the day she gambled with loyalty and lost everything.